Pranayama is the science of controlling prana through the breath. The word pranayama is comprised of two roots. There's prana, which means energy, and yama, which means control. A celibate man or woman must stand firm in chastity until their spouse arrives, and it is not possible to do so without knowing how to transmute sexual energy by means of the science of breathing. The solar and lunar atoms of our organism rise through the spinal column until they reach the brain. These are sacred rites for rejuvenation. The creative power of the third logos, that which gives life to creatures in the womb and makes life spring forth out of chaos, is potent and intelligent enough to bring a woman her exact complement. With this force, we can transmute, transform, and elevate our egotistical consciousness into divine consciousness. This process turns lead into gold. In order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we need to create solar bodies, because without those vehicles of Christ, we cannot resonate with divine laws. We cannot enter heaven with only our lunar bodies. And while this is specifically referring to absolute self-realization and complete liberation, I'm adding here, the solar bodies are a prerequisite for becoming a bodhisattva, or a nirvani, or a asura, like a demigod, just a step down from that. These are the atmospheric heavens. So without them, one may return, without these, one may and can return to Eden as a simple elemental Buddha. And remember, Eden is actually the simple heaven on the earth. It's not the physical world. It is just a step above that. But it's associated with the ground level heaven. And this is what the Theravada school is all about. The Theravada path leads back to Eden, to the simple heaven, because you become a simple Buddha. You do half the work, in fact, with Theravada Buddhism. You don't accomplish the full liberation, actually, with that school. The higher schools of Mahayana and Tantra, or Tibetan Buddhism, do teach the Bodhisattva path. But eventually, as an elemental, you're giving yourself a restart on the wheel of life, and that's good for our situation. And after a very long time, you'll be able to return here from the rest in Eden and evolve again in better circumstances. Now, continuing the instruction by Samael, the devotee should sit in a comfortable chair or on the floor with their face toward the east. Their head and back should be in a straight vertical line, and the body should be relaxed. The procedure is as follows. First, inhale deeply through the nose. As you do so, imagine the energy rising from the sexual organs to the brain while mentally announcing or vocalizing the syllable hum. Next, exhale through the mouth with a short, quick breath while mentally announcing the syllable tsa. The Venerable Master explains in his book that the tsa sound is a gentle whistle, actually, made by placing the tongue against the teeth. While many people practice it as a vocalized tsa sound, a kind of TSA sound, that the S sound itself is sacred and can spark kundalini. It's a sacred sound, technically not a vowel, it's a sacred consonant sound. And when practiced esoterically, it has a slight whistling quality. So this is kind of an interesting addition, a subtle level of sophistication that you can add to this sound that he's explaining specifically in this instruction. He doesn't always explain this. It doesn't have to be loud or sustained. as mentioned. It's a quick breath out. And it sounds like this. So I'm essentially making that sound, but to a point where it whistles. And if you practice enough, you'll probably get it. I'm kind of curling my tongue and keeping my tongue sort of in the middle of my mouth, just under my teeth. During the inhalation, the energy rises. During the exhalation, the energy descends back to the heart. Hum is masculine and solar, while Sa is feminine and lunar. The significance of this practice is the transmutation of sexual energy, of course. And I'll add that the Sa sound actually sparks the kundalini. It excites the energy. It ignites it. That's a better word, actually. So by means of this pranayama, creative energy is directed toward the higher centers of the brain. So it's a very powerful exercise for purifying the lungs and blood, and especially the nadis, the nadi channels, which are unfortunately very dirty for most modern people, especially most of us who've been living this ordinary sensual life. So this is fundamental for awakening consciousness. It's very important that the blood gets purified too, right? Both the physical blood and the etheric substance. So the secret Hamsa is, or rather the secret of it is to perform it with great devotion and concentration while the mind is quiet and in a state of profound meditation. If you can't really reach a state of profound meditation without falling asleep, then just the point is to be concentrated, right? Every esoteric practice needs willpower or concentration. Otherwise, it's useless. It becomes ineffective because you're not directing your attention or intention anywhere. So that ends up being when you practice these things without concentration or will, that's misdirected energy. It just gets wasted. It's like driving a car and not paying attention and being on your phone, right? It's like that. There's a lot of power to it, but where is that power going? And in this case, actually, I'll add that from my experience, if you do these, especially with pranayama, if you do this practice without concentration, that energy will be it'll be tainted. It will be kind of poisonous for your body and for your kundalini. It doesn't feel good you may not feel it, but your tathagatha will. So through constant practice, the student prepares for the great work of self-realization. The practice won't be effective if it isn't performed with this level of focus. So yes, I've found that it's great to do this before bed. For what I've learned through my own experiences, the inner being, or rather Tara, the tathagatha, needs this energy during sleep, especially because the body is rejuvenating and resting. And so she does a lot of work when we're sleeping, right? When you have enough experiences, you can see her do different kinds of, housekeeping in this house that we have, this temple, vacuuming things and cleaning and stuff like that. Sometimes she wears respirators, But that's why it's very good to do this before bed so that she has the fuel to repair your body. So, and even just 10 minutes a day at least is, it tends to be very effective. And I found that even going past that sometimes is unnecessary and a little bit too much. And I often I actually very consistently receive a signal, an indicator somewhere when my session is complete. And it's in the form of synchronicities. So when you're practicing this, pay attention to any synchronicities that are letting you know that your session is thorough and you're finished. It could be that a white car drives by, or you hear a car honk, or that all of a sudden your fridge turns on again, goes through that cycle, or it turns off. You didn't notice it was on, and then all of a sudden everything goes dead because the fridge turned off. Stuff like that are pretty unusual and is unlikely to happen right at the moment you think that you're done your session, and all of a sudden, something happens. That's an indicator that you're good. And we should be looking for these kinds of synchronicities all the time, because that's one way we can communicate physically to our innermost on a regular daily basis before meditation and in supplement to meditation. So just as some people eat certain nutrients at the end of the day to fuel a body that isn't or that's been active, some people like to eat carbs at the end of the night because they want to really fuel up for nighttime. So it's very similar. This practice fuels the internal systems for the night. So that devotion and concentration is key. If you're distracted, the energy, it might accumulate still from the breath, but it won't be seasoned and it won't be effective. In worst cases, it will be poisonous. It'll be toxic. It'll make your kundalini sick. So you don't want that. You don't want to poison your blood with stale, improperly accumulated energy. It'll just be a waste, and too much of that waste too. So we must have deep respect for our Divine Mother, and that relationship should be already established. If it's not, then we learn about this and we work on communicating closely with our inner Tara. So if you're new to this practice, we have to be sincere in it. Concentrate intensely on visualizing the energy rising from the sexual organs and up the spine or the central medulla, and even spiraling through your nadis, the two primary channels, right, into the brain. As you exhale, imagine it subsiding and withdrawing into the heart center or the heart chakra. I once had a visual insight while I was doing this. I could start to see vaguely, I saw a side profile of a man, similar to like a diagram. And I watched this energy slowly vortexing out of the top of his head, probably the crown, and back in again, probably where the bindu is, where the Hindus put the bindus. The brow chakra. It was creating this forward loop from the crown into the forehead or the brow chakra. And so that's something I learned. That's what's actually happening when you perform this. The energy actually goes, expands, it rises very high, and it exits your head and then does a forward loop and into your brow again. So you can imagine it that way too, going really high up there and then making a forward loop and then back into the brow. Now, regarding the appearance of this energy, I've seen it a couple of times in the astral or etheric plane. It's essentially a gaseous, vaporous, and vivid blue substance. I believe it tends to be a very deep electric blue. And as I said, it can have sort of had a gelatinous consistency, I suppose, similar to how water looks in zero gravity. And it also kind of looks like electricity. But if that's difficult to imagine, just choose something that works for you, a visualization that works. I understand it to look like a vapor. It's described as a vapor. It tends to look like that. And we all know what smoke looks like. So maybe try that. I have to remind myself of the specific color and texture. Otherwise, my concentration isn't as effective. And I'm getting used to the color of it. Now, the color doesn't have to be exact, but I was focusing on a very dark, deep, rich blue because I really like that color, and it's close to the blue. I think it's close to it, maybe not as light as the real etheric color. Until my tathagatha suggested light blue. And it's not my favorite color, but it's more uplifting and effective and energizing for her. And you can experiment with different colors because if you know anything about colors, every color has a frequency. And every frequency has an emotional quality to it, or a spiritual, quality, or a set of spiritual attributes. Blue is healing, green is for growth, yellow is stimulating and exciting, red is too, but more passionate, etc. So that's something worth looking into. And if you don't want to complicate this is one of the most simple, easy breathing, pranayama breathing exercises or tummo breathing exercises you can do. So might as well keep it simple and just go with pure bright white.